Although you may not be directly involved in daily hoisting and lifting operations, your job may require moving tools, equipment, and materials with the help of a crane or working in crane operating areas. In the next few minutes, we will examine safety in and around the areas where cranes operate on site. Our objective is to make you more aware of hazards in these areas. Workers in the crane operating area. Site hazards such as overhead power lines, proximity of structures, proximity of other equipment, the load, and factors affecting crane capacity. Let's start with workers in the crane operating area. Supervision must ensure that the operating area is kept clear of unauthorized workers. Only the rigging crew and signalers should be in the vicinity. Suspended loads must not be permitted to pass over the rigging crew or other workers. Beware of the crane's tail swing. When any part of the crane comes within 2 feet of an object against which a worker could be trapped or crushed, the area must be barricaded. Warning signs should be displayed on the counterweight of the machine to keep workers away from the swing area. Signalers are a key part of crane operations. Operators and signalers must confirm signals they will use before making the lift. To ensure accurate communication during hoisting operations, an internationally recognized system of hand signals has been developed. You should know what to do if you are required to give signals. You should know when a signaler is required, where a signaler should be positioned, and the signals to use. The signaler must know and understand the effects of his signals on the movement of the load and/or the crane. Where loads are picked up at one point and lowered at another, 2 signalers may be required, one to direct the lift and one to direct the descent. However, there must be only one signaler giving directions to the operator at any given time. Hand signals should be used only when the distance between the operator and the signaler is not great and conditions allow for clear visibility. A signaler must be a competent worker and should not perform other work while acting as a signaler. When conditions are not suitable for signaling, telephone or two-way communications are best. In fact, two-way communications can be of value for almost all signaling operations. For more information on hand signals, view the video International Hand Signals, available from the Construction Safety Association of Ontario. Watch for overhead power lines. Whenever the equipment is positioned closer than the length of its boom to an energized overhead power line, or if part of the crane or its boom can encroach upon the minimum allowable distance, then the law requires that a signaler be present at all times. The signaler must have a clear view of the equipment and stand in full view of the operator to warn the operator each time any part of the equipment or its load approaches the minimum distance. If any part of the crane contacts live power lines, the operator should try to break contact. If this cannot be done, the operator must shut off the engine and make sure that no one approaches the crane, load line, or load. Many fatalities have occurred when workers touch an electrified crane or rigging or walk into the electrified area. Steps should be taken immediately to have the lines de-energized by the local utility. With a signaler's help, the operator must ensure that no part of the crane, including the boom or the load, comes in contact with other structures. If the boom or load contacts any structure during a lift, the change in stresses can weaken the boom or cause it to collapse. A dry run can help avoid the problem. When a crane is hoisting or traveling with a load, the operator and signaler must be aware of clearance in every direction. Crane and load must be clear of structures, power lines, and any other obstructions. When other equipment is also working in a crane operating area, workers must be especially careful. Always be aware of equipment and loads in motion. Fatalities and injuries can be prevented with proper job site planning and coordination. Whenever the operating areas of cranes overlap, the operators must communicate before moving any part of their machines. If verbal communication is not possible, a coordinator should direct operations. In most cases, interference between machines can be eliminated by coordination and scheduling. It's very important to communicate your intentions regarding movement and placement of the load, so the operator can ensure the crane is positioned and configured to handle the entire lift safely. All cranes must be equipped with sufficient information for the operator to determine the maximum load capacity for each configuration of the crane. The crane must never be subjected to a load greater than its load-rated capacity. In order to use the load chart effectively, it is essential for the operator to know the weight of the load. This information can be obtained from shipping papers, design plans, catalog data, and other dependable sources. When such information is not available, it is necessary to calculate the load weight. Accurate calculation will ensure that the crane does not exceed safe operating limits, resulting in instability or structural failure. Rig loads to prevent any parts from shifting or dislodging during the lift. Suspended loads should be securely slung and properly balanced before they're set in motion. Keep the load under control at all times. Where personnel may be endangered by a rotating or swaying load, use one or more tag lines to prevent uncontrolled motion. The load line should be brought over the load center of gravity before the lift is started. If not, the load will shift when airborne until the center of gravity lines up with the hook. Loads must be safely landed and properly blocked before being unhooked and unslung. When placing a load temporarily, either on the ground or on a structure such as a rooftop, be sure the area under the load can handle the extra strain. It may be necessary to lay down temporary beams or matting to prevent instability of the load or collapse of the structure. Use caution when lifting loads, lowering loads, or when you're unhooking slings. Make sure that all the slings are clear of the load. This way they won't catch or upset the load or suddenly fly loose. The many factors affecting crane capacity fall into two main groups: those which affect the structural strength of the machine and those which affect its stability or resistance to tipping. Although crane setup is the responsibility of the operator, riggers should be aware of some of the factors which reduce the crane's capacity, as this will greatly assist the operator in accomplishing a safe and efficient lift operation. Whether it's a tower crane, a mobile crane, or a boom truck, any crane's lifting capacity varies with boom length, boom angle, hoist line configuration, and the crane's counterweights. With mobile cranes, additional factors can affect the crane's ability to make the lift safely. These factors include whether the lift is being made over the front, back, or sides of the machine, whether outriggers are used, and what the ground conditions are. It's the operator's responsibility to ensure, either by inspection or consultation, that the operating areas are adequately graded, level, and compacted. Ground conditions are especially critical when pick and carry operations are planned. Remember too that ground conditions on a given site may vary considerably with the weather. When outriggers are required, there must be enough space for the outriggers to be extended fully and for the upper works to rotate freely. The area should be chosen to afford the operator a clear view of the load at all stages of the lift. Where possible, clear any obstructions that would block the operator's view. The operator must make sure that the crane is properly set up and that the load being lifted is within the limits set out in the crane's load chart. In this session, we have dealt with the following topics: workers in the crane operating area, site hazards such as overhead power lines, proximity of structures, proximity of other equipment, the load, and factors affecting the crane's capacity. Being aware of hazards in crane operating areas is important. Be alert and protect yourself. For further information and resources, contact your Construction Safety Association of Ontario.